The coffee was too hot, but I drank it anyway. That's how our mornings went now. Me at the kitchen island, you moving silently from the counter to the fridge, the only sounds the clink of your spoon and the hum of the appliance. We used to talk over coffee, about the weird dream you had, the work meeting I was dreading, anything. Now the silence felt like a third person in the room. You handed me my lunch bag, already packed. You'd made my favorite sandwich, the one with the extra pickle. It was a kind gesture, but it felt automatic, like you were following a manual for a machine you no longer understood. Thanks, I said. You nodded, already looking past me to check the time on the microwave. I might be late tonight, you mentioned, rinsing your mug. Budget reviews. Okay. Probably just have leftovers then. Another nod. It was the same exchange we had last Tuesday, and the Tuesday before that. We were so polite, so careful not to bump each other's. I wanted to ask what you were really thinking about when you stared out the window while brushing your teeth. I wanted to tell you I'd started sleeping on my side of the gen, that the distance between us of the sheets felt physical, like a ridge I couldn't cross. But the words just sat in my throat. That evening, the house was too quiet. I finished my plate in front of the TV, not really watching. I heard your key in the door at 8:15. You looked tired. How were the reviews? I asked. Long, you said, hanging up your coat with slow, precise movements. You didn't ask about my day. You came into the living room, but you didn't sit next to me on the couch. You stood by the armchair, as if waiting for permission. Everything okay? I finally asked. It was a generic question, the kind you ask a coworker. You looked at me then, and for a second, your face was unguarded. I saw a flicker of something exhaustion, a question. But you blinked and it was gone. Just tired, you said. I think I'll turn in early. I listened to you climb the stairs. The routine of it, the water running in the sink, the creak of the floorboards, the finality door clicking shut felt heavier than any argument. I sat there in the blue light of the television, holding my cold coffee. I knew you were just lying there in the dark, awake. I knew if I went up, we would just lie back to back, two parentheses facing away from each other, with nothing in between. So I stayed on the couch, listening to the silence, wondering when exactly we had started living past each other, and how we could possibly find our way back. The next morning, the gap on your side of the bed was cold. I'd fallen asleep on the couch, and you hadn't come down to get me. That small fact sat with me while I showered. The steam didn't warm the chill in my chest. Downstairs, you'd made only one cup of coffee, yours. You were reading on your phone, your toast untouched on a plate. Sorry about last night, I said, pouring my own coffee. I fell asleep out here. You looked up, and your expression was blank pleasant. I figured, it's fine. You went to your phone. The apology hovered useless. It wasn't about the couch, and we both knew it, but naming the real thing felt impossible. Later, I was putting away laundry. I opened your closet to hang up a shirt and saw the suitcase. Our big travel one, but the small carry-on you use for weekend sisters. It was sitting there, open and empty on the floor, just waiting. You hadn't mentioned a trip. I stood there holding your shirt, the hanger feeling flimsy in my hand. Was this a plan or just a thought made physical? I didn't ask. I just hung the shirt up and closed the closet door quietly, like I was hiding evidence. That night, we ate dinner together at the table, a rarity. We talked about the neighbor's new car, a leaky faucet, safe topics that span distance like narrow, shaky planks. In the middle of a sentence about grocery shopping, you just stopped. You put your fork down and looked at your hands. What is it? I asked, my own pulse suddenly loud in my ears. You shook your head, a quick, tight motion. Nothing. Just. You gave a small, failed attempt at a smile that didn't reach your eyes. I think I need an early night again. I finished eating alone, listening to the house settle. When I went up, the bedroom was dark. You were on your side facing the window. I got into bed carefully, the space between us wide and charged. I thought I heard your breathing catch, like you were holding back a tear or a word. I stayed perfectly still, staring at the ceiling, waiting for you to turn or speak. You didn't. After a long time, your breathing evened out into sleep, or the imitation of it. I lay there, wide awake, wondering if us was already more gone. 2 days later, the suitcase was gone from the closet. I stood staring at the empty space where it had been, my hand frozen on the doorknob. You were at work. I walked through the house, checking for other absences. Your toothbrush was still there. Your favorite jacket hung in the hall. I felt ridiculous, like a detective in my own life. When you came home, you brought takeout. Figured we could use a night off from cooking, you said, your voice carefully light. We ate on the couch, a comedy show playing. You laughed at a joke, and the sound was so unfamiliar it made me jump. I laughed too, a beat too late. It felt like we were acting poorly. Are you going to see your sis soon? I asked during a commercial, trying to sound casual. You paused, a container of halfway to your plate. Maybe. She's been asking. You didn't look at me. Work is just hectic. I nodded, my appetite gone. The suitcase was a fact, now sitting on the cushions. You hadn't denied it. You hadn't explained. The silence stretched, filled only by the inane chatter of the TV. You reached for the remote and turned the volume up, a little too loud. We finished eating in the roar of it, the noise a wall against any more questions. After, you took containers to the kitchen. I heard the water run, the clatter of the recycling bin. The ordinary sounds felt like a performance of normalcy, each one pushing the real conversation further away. I stayed on the couch, trapped in the bright, laughing glow of the screen, knowing the quiet when it returned would be even heavier. A week passed. The suitcase never reappeared in the closet. We moved around each other with a new kind of caution, like the air itself was brittle. On Saturday, you made pancakes, a ritual from years ago. You even hummed while you cooked, a tune I almost recognized. For an hour, it felt like a memory. We ate at the table, sunlight streaming in, and it was almost easy. Then you reached for the syrup and your sleeve pulled back. I saw a faint, fresh tan line on your wrist, a pale strip where your watch usually was. Off. I stared at my plate, the sweetness in my mouth turning cloud. Where had you been without it? I didn't ask. The question sat in the space between us, and the hopeful morning light suddenly felt harsh and exposing. That night, I pretended to be asleep when you came to bed. I listened to you breathe, trying to match the rhythm of sleep. After a while, you whispered, so quiet I thought I imagined it. I'm sorry. I didn't move. I didn't know what you were apologizing for, the tan line, the suitcase, or for what was still to come. A minute later, you got up. I heard the soft click of the study door down the hall. I finally opened my eyes to the dark room, the empty space beside me now nothing expectant, like it was waiting for a final answer. I just didn't know if the answer was an ending, or a beginning, or something else entirely.